I'm here with Josh of Decapitation to talk about Terracite, out May 12th on Metal Blade Records. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Kind of
It's a
foggy after all I've done today, but yeah, I'm doing all right.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you back. Last time I saw you, we were talking in person at a show in Toronto before the
Mhm.
pandemic took a hold of the world.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see you, and it's nice to see you guys releasing new music. And let's start off with that. A little bit of the past, a little bit of the present. How much did Death Atlas impact the Terracite record? Not just musically, but also from a lyrical content point of view.
I think like lyrically and like concept wise, I think Death Atlas was this sort of like here's this extinction of everything. Here's this fine like look at the cover art. Here's this charred Earth. It was kind of like this element of finality. So when coming up with like a next direction, Travis is really like, oh, where the heck do we go from here? So he had to really get creative and kind of the only sort of solution, there were other people or like other sort of ideas like, well, we're not going to do some sort of space record or some otherworldly thing. So he's like, well, keeping it terrestrial, I guess. Where do we move from here? So he actually kind of was, I don't want to say digging around, but like he had this concept for like that we see on the cover for Terracite, this creature years ago, and that was something that the rest of us his bandmates didn't even really know about. He has like a kind of a file, basically song title ideas, lyrical ideas, concepts, where to go, and he kind of was able to meld this with post Death Atlas pretty seamlessly. So it's like you have this world apocalypse and Death Atlas, and then this next thing you have like say with anything, like well, this the meteorite killing the dinosaurs or whatever. Well, there's certain things that survive, and there's rebirth after that. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the Terracite concept. You have the cover, you have grass peeking up, you have this sort of new dawn representing everything, kind of renewing or starting over. So you have that, and then you have this like kind of fantastic creature that's this melding of cockroach and human, which is like everything gets metaphorical at that point. But Ben Scoter like renders this in a very physical form, and you have this creature that has the intelligence of a human or approaching the intelligence of a human, but also that sort of very selfish, like kind of self-interest and of a human. But then you have this hardiness of this cockroach and this sort of almost machine-like, eating survival machine melded into one entity. So you have a sort of, viciously intelligent eating machine. So it's just you have these things erupting on Earth everywhere. So Earth isn't going to get a break. Yeah, there should be this cleansing sort of action of global sort of meltdown apocalypse. But nope, we have this new thing that's evolving, and it's here to kind of destroy the Earth. Of course, keeps with our sort of direction, and it's the sort of the corner we painted ourselves in with Death Atlas conceptually. This kind of starts everything over. You have this rebirth. So whatever he's going to come up with for the next record, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't either, but I don't really know the rest of the band. And as far as music goes, we just really wanted to expand upon what we were doing on Death Atlas, like a lot more atmospheric. I mean, at least on the guitar end, I should say, a lot more atmospheric elements, and really kind of dial those up. Dave McGraw, our drummer, really emphasized wanting to have a little more, because we've been playing super fast most of our existence. I mean, pretty much our entire existence. Mm-hmm. So people know we can do that all day. So he's like, I really kind of want to we're not going to stop having blast parts, of course, but he's like, I really want to have like a little more groove and like conventional heaviness, to this record, a little more lurching, kind of ominous, groove. So we're going to incorporate that. We're going to have a little more atmospheric guitar elements, or just overall in production. So I think we did that pretty successfully. So I think any one of our records, like you always hear little tidbits that are kind of just hints that are really realized in whatever record comes out after that. So whatever comes after Terracite, I say this every record, I don't know what's coming next. Like what aspect that we've kind of brought in is really going to kind of take over and be an identifier and identity, a solid identity for the next material. I don't know.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because I see it that from a fan's point of view. So I felt like Death Atlas was perhaps a great record for anybody who has hasn't listened to the band before, but wants to get into the band, sound-wise, Death Atlas had a little bit of an easier approach to it. This one, you guys piggyback off of that, those small elements of easiness that Death Atlas had. This album has a little bit more of that because of those atmospheric elements, a lot more melodic as well. So from a fan's point of view, if you're trying to get into the band and the earlier material kind of scares you away, these two last records are perhaps an easier path to then appreciate the more heavier, more in-your-face approach that you guys had earlier on. Do you see it as well?
Yeah, I think people like, because of, like I mentioned, like Dave wanted to have a little more groove, or not, I don't know, groove sounds so like, yeah, but just like a little more headbanginess, to it. Bringing in those elements, I think that's something for, like you said, people who may not necessarily like earlier stuff that's just like blast most of the time and just like super abrasive. It might be easier for them to jump on because there is that thing they can like rock out in that conventional way too, or put on in their car and just drive around to, or whatever, but there's still just a lot of the traditional elements of the band that's just fast ripping kind of stuff. So it's not like we've abandoned that or done those things that some bands do where they're like, they start as having this type of vision and they keep it kind of, but then there's like the token song on one record that's still like it used to be, and then everything else is like some attempt at, like, I don't want to say evolving, but just like popularity or whatever. It's like, there's still plenty of songs on Terracite that are just like the opening track, the first two tracks actually are just super ripping. And then I think it's not that we dial back on that. It's just everything gets a lot more, there's a lot more variety, a lot more dynamic elements to it. And there's certain songs that to me have like it's like a cinematic quality to it that builds out. And there's this huge, like, super dense, but, really dynamic sound where there's all these different layers going on. Both guitars are doing different things. Bass is right there. The drums have this big sort of triumphant thing. The vocals are, of course, super acrobatic, what Travis is doing. So it's this other, becomes another thing. So I don't know whether we're going to fully explore that sort of stuff more or not. I don't know. Like, we actually, when we get together before this tour we have coming up, I think that'll be part of the points of discussion, what we're going to do whenever we start writing, for the next record, because we see each other kind of not super frequently. It's pretty much right before we tour. So, when we get together, it's like business time. So
yeah,
we'll talk about
get
that.
down to the nitty gritty. One of the things you guys do very well is create an album that is not just about great songs individually, but it's also about creating a very dynamic and fluid experience from start to end. At what point in the process do you guys start to look at how the record shape is going to have to be in order for these songs to really give the most of themselves, not just individually, but in the overall context?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny when we're writing them, even if it's a song that's really early on in the writing process, it'll be like, oh, this seems like a song 5 or 6. Don't ask me why. Like all of us will have like, oh, it's that vibe, middle of the record vibe, or oh, this one's like, a closer or an opener. Funny thing is, with the first 3 songs on Terracite, those were the first 3 songs we wrote in order for the record. And there was no, when we're trying to figure out like song order when we were in the studio, we all kind of put in our 2 cents on what should come where and everything. And Dave McGraw kind of came in, he's like, I know it's crazy because it's, a little too convenient and easy, but the first 3 songs that we wrote, 1, 2, and 3, what if we could do those as the opener? And it was like, oh, huh. And we kind of lined it up, had them edited together in the studio, and we listened to it. And it's like, oh, that actually works really well. So that was a happy accident, that happened. And then with the rest of the songs, like, I think, well, like for whatever reason, like the past couple records, like the big kind of closing song has been one of, if not the last song written, I think we kind of like, not avoid, but it's all sort of like, we haven't written that one yet, whatever that one is. And we get to the point where we're like, you have to write that one now, so we're right at the end of everything. And like both with Death Atlas, a song, and Justin and the Body is a song, like those are both the last songs written for those records. So it's kind of like we get these bookends and then we kind of fill in, where we think, but it's like our order, like you did mention, like the sequence is extremely important, you know, because like people don't, our bands seemingly, especially extreme metal bands, like they don't, I mean, I don't feel they've, like in recent history, haven't paid as much attention to that as they should. You know, it's like you're putting out this statement and you want things to flow in a way that makes you want to listen to the whole statement as a singular thing and not like do singles. Well, I mean, as much as the world is going for singles now, you don't just skip around or, oh, I'm going to pull this song and put it on a playlist and there's no continuity compared to the rest of the record. It's like we want people to have like, want to hear such and such a song coming after this one. We want, you know, people to continue on, or like, man, you know, I listened it through the end because it just seems like such a singular thing. Everything flows into each other. And that's always been incredibly important to us. I mean, it's always been important to us, but we really kind of got a lot better at doing that in the past 10 years or so. So like the flow of records really is kind of an organic thing, kind of a living thing, as opposed to a collection of songs.
I said earlier this week on Facebook that you guys are the most intelligent death metal band or extreme metal band in the world right now. You guys make incredibly intelligent music, from the artwork that ties up to the name of the album, that ties up to the song titles, that ties up then with the lyrical content, with the music that you created for those songs that matches also the vibe of the lyrics and everything else. A lot of bands out there don't take the time to go into the weeds, and I feel like you guys overthink the process, but then deliver it in a way that's almost simplified for us listeners to be able to grasp what you're trying to say without you having to necessarily spoon feed us. In a process that seems so convoluted, what are the biggest challenges in order to make all of these different pieces coming together so perfectly so that the puzzle is clear?
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the way that we do like kind of go deep with stuff and then have to like kind of harness or like not pull it back, but just kind of really realize it's like, okay, we know we have the tendency to pull on. My cat is stepping all over things. The tendency to kind of like, I don't want to say get sidetracked, but I think musically we have Dave Otero kind of harnesses our tendencies to do that. And like conceptually, like it's definitely like I don't know if other bands just like, it's not that Travis just really cares so much about the concepts and conveying what his, you know, what he values in there and what the meaning is, that, you know, it's always, you're never going to be sort of, I don't want to say shorted, but you're never going to be have a lack of material to kind of digest, either in the lyrics themselves or just the concepts of the record or anything like that. It's like a wealth of information, and if people want to talk to him about it, he's of course more than happy to go on, or fully explain himself. And then musically, like, ask any one of us and we'll just blah blah blah, go about our angles for the music part, Travis with the concepts and the lyrics. It's, I don't know, like I always feel like with, well, not certain bands, like I'm thinking of anyone, I'm not thinking of any particular band, but like they may be, everything's in the music, and then there's no real concept. It's more just like, oh, we'll sing some death metal-y shit. I don't know, someone dying, is there a rotting body? Great, okay, cool. And then others like go into this sort of like the artwork's elaborate, there's this, almost like a novel of concept and everything. And then musically, it's just kind of like not bad, but it's just sort of like, it's serviceable, it's fine. I think we've kind of ebbed and flowed in that since 2002 or whatever, but I think we really kind of got better about balancing and maximizing both of those elements in the band in the past 10 years or so, to where like the songwriting is tighter and dynamic and interesting and engaging, and Travis's his concepts are really kind of like streamlined, like hardcore. It's not like other earlier records where it's just like there's I don't want to say a generality, but like okay, here's the band's kind of thrust or theme. Okay, here's a lot of songs that are kind of contribute to that. Whereas later, Monolith, say, on, maybe even Harvestor a little bit. Okay, here's this central thing that's happening. Okay, here's songs that support that idea. But with this record, actually, the Terrasite, the first half of the record it does kind of support the cover. Like there's Decapitation, We Are Young, and all that. You see that like bits, at least even if not the entirety of the lyrical scope, bits of that you see the cover. With the latter half of the record, to me at least, there's a lot more personal stuff in there, like not about the cover, because the time that those lyrics were written, and especially like those last couple songs, especially the last song, that was written when we like right after we found, or was in the process of being written, right after we found about our one of our founding members passing away. So that definitely kind of set a mood and put everyone in a certain headspace, and everyone is kind of grieving and dealing with that however they did personally. And then when we were in the studio, like Travis at that point didn't have lyrics for Just Another Body, so he was in the midst of toying with writing those after Gabe's passing, and then we learned of Trevor Sternan passing at the same time too, who was a supporter of our band for years. So it's just, you start to not necessarily question, but be a little more reflective than you would normally, and go through whatever internal processes to kind of hopefully like go on to the next day. And I mean, obviously he was dealing with that, and Gabe had been, he left the band on good circumstances or good terms, so we were all friends with him, and maybe we didn't see him all the time, but there was always a connection. We'd come out and watch his bands play, he'd come out and see us if he could, and shoot him a message online or a text here and there, and there was still a good healthy relationship, and so that affected all of us greatly. So it was a I want to say an atmosphere during the recording. I know it wasn't something where we were, staring out a window blankly, all the time, but it was definitely affected, maybe certain choices as far as like production wise, and what I like, certain guitar stuff I did. And with Travis, like definitely like lyrics on a few of the songs, and his performance. Like, I mean, it's a lot more sort of emotional. Not more so, not like, his past were not that way, because they were, but this one's just did the time very profoundly emotionally impactful, and when he was in the recording booth, like, his room has his little music stand where he has his laptop where his lyrics are out, and his little mug of tea and everything, but then he had a picture of Gabe on the wall, so he could, when he was singing, he just looks at Gabe, so that was obviously weighing heavily upon him, and the inspiration was there. This wasn't an empty like my fallen brother and then that's it. This was something that was definitely gnawing at him and all of us while we were in the studio. So yeah, it was definitely, you hear that on the record. So for anyone that's listening or whatever, that has like, once they hear that song and it's like, oh, what was going on then? It's like, well, that was going on then.
You mentioned about the sound, what you wanted, or what the drummer wanted from the drum sound, but what did you wanted from the guitar sound coming into this album?
I wanted, like, I was always I've been pretty happy with our guitar tone. I mean, as a guitar player, you're never 100% happy. You're always like, oh, trying to like mess with stuff that's probably not broken. But we pretty much use the same setups. I use the same guitar that I've used for the past like 3 records. Bell used the same guitar as he did on Death Atlas. And the one of the main amps was my amp, the High Watt that I used. That was used again. And then we had, actually, the other amp was we used a PV6505 on Death Atlas, and this one used a 6534, which is an EL34 based amp, a little more British sounding and slightly different mids. I was surprised how much I liked it. So the blending of the High Watt and that really kind of gave things a little more like a toothy kind of aggression, in my opinion.
A little bit more.
And we actually kind of dialed back, like both Bell and I discussed, we're like pulling the gain back a bit. Not that we're super gained out band, but like for extreme death metal, whatever you want to call it, we pulled back the gain a bit just for clarity purposes, and because sometimes it's like, it's almost more aggressive to me, more aggressive sounding with everything a little less compressed and kind of zizzy. Plus, we kind of fudged with the bass was brought up in the mix, like bass guitar, not bass overall bass, but just bass guitar was brought up, and that really, like, to me, added a lot of richness in the strings in general. Like, it just bolstered the guitar's tones, and the whole sound of the record on the string end was just a lot kind of richer and woodier, if that makes any sense. And there was a lot more warmth to it without being like analog warmth. Not that it's a bad thing, obviously, but just like that wasn't the type of warmth. It's just the EQing or just the voicing of each instrument was a little more sort of almost bowed sounding and sonorous, like really just like a lot of rich kind of just more sort of homey elements. That's probably not the right term, you know. It's like, oh, it's a homey death metal record. No, it's
maybe
you know abrasive, but it's like a little more richer sounding, I guess you could say.
I just have a couple of more questions for you. One
Sure.
is what's for you? I've seen you guys perform live many times. I got to chat with you before going on stage last time. Not last time you were in Toronto, but before the pandemic. You guys are super chill dudes. You're super nice guys. Everybody seems to be having such a great time. Really a brotherhood, if you will. What is the best thing about being in a band like Cattle Decapitation?
I think being with a group of people who really, I mean, it's kind of the double-edged sword sort of thing. It can be just as rewarding as it is frustrating. But I think of just who are never really satisfied and want to just keep excelling at what we're doing and always doing something different or trying to move to a different place and never kind of like settling or coasting. You know, so I know everyone is similarly motivated in the band in that way. So that's really satisfying. And then just, you know, I mean, I think everyone just kind of like, we're all, not all of us, but most of us kind of getting to the age where it's just like, do the show, sweat your ass off, and then just kind of like, you know, chill out a bit. I mean, everyone's like, so there's a partying contingent in the band, you know, let's not, you know, I'm not trying to say that everyone's, you know, putting their slippers on and, you know, taking a nap, but that's me. But you know, I think it's to me, it's like, you know, after the show's done, merch hasn't been torn down yet, you know, we're done playing, we go back, you know, a couple of us, you know, shower after we're done or whatever, and then you just go sit in the vehicle and just kind of like, I believe I will microwave a Hot Pocket or whatever, you know. It's kind of like, it's almost like there's like a sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say, like, once again, I come back with this word, completely different sort of reference, but like a hominess element. It's like, you know, that's your moving home, and we're fortunate enough to be able to rent something that has bunks, it has like little seats, it has, you can, very abbreviated, but you can cook if you want. You know, there's a fridge and everything like that. So you can really kind of like dig in, you know, so it's after the show, if you want to just like not necessarily be in the club venue party environment, you can just go and chill in the vehicle. So it's like, I'm glad we have a place we can go. You have that intensity of the performance. You have that, you get that part out of you on stage. And then you just kind of like sweat, tear your stuff down, throw it in the vehicle or the trailer. And then you're just like, okay, I can relax for 5 seconds. Now let me microwave my dinner I didn't finish or whatever. It's just like, it's almost like you go to work and come home and you're like, oh, I'm gonna microwave some food and put on a movie or whatever, you know. It's like you can continue your whatever your comfortable environment is there, you know. And instead of like how many years of all of us or any of us going, well, I got to drive 7 hours tonight because the next venue is so and so, so I better eat something and try to take a nap before we leave. And you know, I don't know. I'm so, it sounds spoiled, but I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore. I mean, I did that from 1994 until 2015. And then we were able to finally kind of start renting vehicles that would allow us to like bunks and have other drivers and stuff. So it's, yeah. Oh.
You're not opening it up, but you just improved your methods of transportation.
Exactly. And that's so, I mean, everyone like wants the best and everything. And we've, if we're in Europe, maybe we'll be with 3 other bands and we'll not go in on it, but like a nightliner, as they call them over here, will be more of a reality. But in the States, no, we're not affording that. So there's this bandwagon is this other, you know, sort of outlet for that. And I'm sure people who go to shows see these like almost like a black surveillance vehicle that's parked next to the venue. It's got like a semi front and then this big black box and a big black trailer. So that's a bandwagon. So it has full-size bunks like you'd have in a bus, so you're not compromised, you're not squeezing into this little thing. And it has a shower, like a full, like vertical stand-up shower. And then, you know, like a regular sized fridge and a microwave and all that. And then, like, if you're in this playing video games, there's like a TV with like all that capability. There's satellite TV and all that stuff. So you can really, you know, it's not bus size. You don't have the front lounge, the back lounge, and all that. It's not big like that. But for our scale and for what we can afford, what else can you ask for? You know what I mean? It becomes home, you know? So those little comforts really kind of like improve morale or maintain morale and just allow us to keep doing what we do on a level and with not absolutely hating our lives for that reason. Other reasons maybe, but not that one.
And so speaking of being on a bandwagon, last question for you. I saw you guys at closing off last year on the Amon Amarth tour. You guys are hitting the road now with Dark Funeral. What can fans expect from a set list coming into this, considering now you guys have a brand new record?
Yeah, we're going to be doing, we've said this for, well, pandemic not counted that time period, but we've said it for like a while now. We're like, let's play some older songs, like in addition to new stuff. So that's always a tussle in the band chat, you know, this whole like, oh, let's do something from Karma Blake Karma. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. Or let's do this from Harvest Floor. No, I don't want to do that. Or whatever. This from Desert Man, you know, just one song here or there. And, you know, that's a constant battle. But for the set list for this upcoming tour, yes, there's 3 new songs that we're going to be doing. 1 or 2 from Death Atlas, and then everything else is material that we haven't played in several years. You know, so it's I mean, it's not way back. We're not like going like Desert Man or Humanoid era, but it's stuff that people have voiced, you know, interest in hearing again, that we haven't played in some of them, I think 5 or 6 years, played those songs. So we're baby steps. We're hopefully I can, you know, exert a little more influence and we can do some older material. But for right now, yeah, we're past 10 or the oldest we're gonna get is past 10 or 12 years. And then, you know, obviously a few new songs and then a couple of Death Atlas.
Well, on that note, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys play in Toronto on that tour. I know it's going to be a great show. You guys always put on a great show, so I'm really excited to hear the older stuff, to hear the new stuff. It's always a pleasure talking to you about the band, about the music. So thank you very much for taking the time today.
Of course, thank you.
Take care, man. All the best.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again, and yeah, we'll hopefully see you in Toronto.
All right, I'll be waving.
Yeah, I'll wave it. Yeah, I'll come out and be like, you know, it's Toronto's always kind of like it's not difficult, but like the amp brand I use is based. It's now Canadian owned. They're shops in Scarborough, but yeah, the head rep lives in the sort of not in the immediate neighborhood, but pretty close to Opera House. So I'm always running around with him. But like, yeah, I'd love to say hey, you know, because I remember exactly the interview you're talking about. We're sitting on that couch in that far green room.
Yeah, in that middle room, not the main room, that small little room.
Yeah. And I just remember like people saying like, "Why are you all bunched up like this?" I'm like, I don't know. That was comfortable. I was sitting here like this, and they're like, "You're all mashed up on that couch." And I don't know.
Yeah, there was
so, all good.
I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to seeing the guys. All the best with the release, and I'll see you in Toronto.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. Have a great evening, and I appreciate you doing this. Thanks.
No problem. Take care, man. Bye.
Yeah, take it easy, man.